just because I like how simple it is, and it's a really cool thing. So if you forget your tent stakes ever, don't be that noob and don't put stakes in your tent. You can go ahead and carve one. Alright, so first thing, we're just going to carve all the bark. Yep, you guys can work as I work if you want. It doesn't have to be perfect, as long as we get it all off.
How do you deal with knots, preferably?
So what I like to do is instead of like just going at it all the way from the bottom and trying to chop it all off at once, I'll work from the very tip of the knot and just keep cutting the top off till I get down. And it seems to be a lot easier like that. So I just go all the way from like the tip of that knot, like the top of the mountain type deal, and just cut my way down slowly, piece by piece. It's gonna be working for you. And then if you use the bottom of your blade, you usually get way better leverage on a hard spot.
Oh, of course,
yeah.
Makes sense. One thing about not doing this, if it is in the cold or it's in the dark, and you're in the habit.
Yeah.
Right?
There you go, man.
Do, so it's just another reason.
That makes, yeah. I might use that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And like,
especially if you have like a puko style knife, and
right?
even if you look at it, it's the same shape, both sides.
Yeah.
You could very easily do that. I like that.
Yeah.
Got us a thinking man. All right, cool. So once you guys are done with that, we're gonna move on to our first actual piece of carving here. And this is simply called the stake notch. So I'll have you guys pause for a second, just watch me do it, and then I'll have you do it. So towards one of our ends, about an inch or so from the end, it doesn't have to be very specific, we're going to take our knife, and in the middle of our blade, we're going to push down onto our stake. And then we're going to rock back and forth just a little bit. It doesn't have to be crazy. Push down, nice and good. And then we're going to be left with that deep slit right there. Now from the longer end towards the shorter end, we're going to come about a ½ inch below that. So again, we're going to be doing this on the longer end. So we're going to be like a ½ inch or so below that, and then we're going to carve up slowly with the thumb assist method, and it's going to stop there. So that first cut was called the stop cut. And then we're just going to do it a couple of times. And be careful. If you get to a point where it really feels like it's hard to push, you're going to split this whole thing off if you push too hard. So you shouldn't be putting any crazy effort into this. If you get to that point where you can't push anymore without it falling off, just come back, do another stop cut, push down, you hear that click, and then it'll come off. And what it's going to end up looking like, it's almost going to look like a 7. That's called your stake notch. So you guys can go ahead and try that now. This is one of the most used notches that I use, like for anything. I use it in traps. I use it in this. We're gonna use it in the fishing spears. Yeah, you can just use the front of the blade. It's always the people with the serrated edges who realize, like, ah, damn, This gets in my way. You can also use one of our knives. We have like 8 of them out. And this is where knowing your tools really comes into play too. If you've never used it for anything like this, you might not like, you might like the way a knife looks, but you might not like the way it works, right? And this is the way you discover that.
Or if it was bought for you.
Exactly, yeah. And I've been through so many knives. She said it was bought for her.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm gonna try one of yours.
For sure. Yeah, your stop cuts don't have to be too deep at first. You can just do a small stop cut and then push into it, take a little feather off, do another stop cut, and do it as many times as you need to. And it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be deep at all. That's just the notch for our stake. So just a piece of paracord has to comfortably fit in there. Yeah, so you reach that point, right? You have the feathers building up and they won't come off. Yep, so just push down. You'll hear like a little bit of a click and they'll fall off. Or should. I love building up a ton of feathers and then just crunching down on them. You can feel a lot of yeah, feels good. I wish I had $1 for every 10 steak I carved.
Sell them.
Yeah,
$1.
yeah, that'd be cool. Like trade blanket. I'll give you a 10 steak.
You should put out like 100.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be cool. Like a roll of 10 steaks.
Yeah.
Everyone doing good?
That's deep enough?
That's perfect. That's exactly what
Yeah,
you
that's
need.
what I was gonna say. How deep?
Yeah,
How
that's
deep are those?
more than fine.
Okay.
Again, just picture like a piece of paracord sitting in there comfortably.
Really good.
Really good.
Is it black birch? It smells
Mine doesn't
wintergreen?
Yeah,
Yours
the
it smells?
wintergreen smell.
Yeah, yeah, it's black birch or sweet birch. Looks like my favorite tea.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Nice.
it's so good.
Yeah, I've never tried it. Sweet birch. The wood or the bark?
The bark. Yeah, so just strip the bark off and make tea out of it. And it starts to coil up in there, and water turns like a deep, deep brown, like chaga. So you bring it. It's kind of like doing pine needle tea. So you bring it. You can bring it to a boil, but you just steep it. Yeah. As long as the plant isn't in there while it's boiling, you're good. All right, cool. So the other side, the opposite side that we did that 7-notch, we're just gonna go around and we're gonna sharpen it to a point.
Okay.
I want to see more of a shallow point, so I want it to taper down to a point from like higher up, so like a very thin point, as opposed to like a very broad point at the end. Just so you guys can kind of practice the control of your cuts.
Like a test.
Yeah, like a tent stake almost. So come from higher up and work your way all the way down. Yeah, this is more of just like a warm-up exercise for you guys at this point. It is cool, but we'll get to the better stuff.
I think this is a great way to start.
Definitely. And you don't have to file this down to an absolute, like if I touch it, it goes into my skin point. It's a relative point so it can get into the ground.
Is it in a New Hampshire or Vermont campsite?
Yeah. They're probably everywhere and you just don't know. Kent State. Actually, when I went out to Washington a couple weeks ago, I had to make tent stakes because we didn't have any. It's like, oh, cool.
Living my class.
Yeah, right.
Vampire killer.
Yeah, that's always the joke every time.
Oh, really?
Or that's when people find out that they're not here for a carving class, they're here for a vampire killing class. Tricked ya.
Got a vampire in mind. Great.
I know the exact one.
I may have a lot to say on it, or I may be like, oh, that's what that.
Yes. You know my fucking little bear right there?
No, I'm not.
Good little bear.
I might not. I might do. I don't. That's what that is.
Yeah.
And I can name it, but I might not be. I'll be able to name most of the actual ones. But if I know about it,
That is one hell of a backpack. That thing's huge.
Yeah, I was looking at
Cool.
that earlier.
It's very impressive. So it's
Very intentional.
Yeah, that's cool.
we have like.
Alright, so once you guys got your points, you're gonna go again all the way to the other side. And then we're just gonna take little chunks off with the thumb assist as we go around. We're kind of making the shape of like a king's crown on the top. We're chamfering the edge. Also, it's kind of just like we're reducing the surface area of the top of the steak. Yeah, there you go.
I know it's not poison hemlock.
It's like King's Crown.
It made sense since I saw what you're doing.
Yeah, I try to explain it a couple different ways. And then sometimes people will be like, for some reason a lot of engineers will come to my classes. I don't know why. But they're like, oh, chamfering. So I try to use that word. Chamfering, yeah.
Kind of going for that situation.
You got it, exactly. So what this does is this reduces the surface area of the top. So when we strike a blow into this, it's going to travel down right into the tip instead of just like all around, and some energy will die out as this tapers down. It doesn't really matter in the smaller stakes, but it matters with big stakes. Also, what that does is when you are hammering on these stakes, again, especially with big stakes, this top is going to start to mushroom out and create false edges. I've done it. I've had a huge stake and I was pounding it in, and it mushroomed out, created false edges, and I accidentally struck the false edge and I hit my thumb right here, and it hurt like hell for days. I had a big bruise there. So just chamfering the edge will stop that from happening. There's just a bunch of reasons to do it, and it looks cool. Also, what I might do is if the top is like this and it's kind of crooked, I might just switch my knife backwards. Ooh, not supposed to do that. And then I'll just cut that and try to make it as level as possible. You don't have to, but it's a really cool, controlled way to do it. It's a bit of a risky cut, but if you know what you're doing, you'll be fine. Just do it nice and slow. So that's your tent stake. And if you want to upgrade your tent stake, and you really want to look like you know what you're doing, on the opposite side that we made this 7-notch, so it's going to be on the opposite side and the opposite end. We're going to make another 7-notch that we did that same way. We're just going to make it so the two ends are facing each other. Does that make sense?
on the opposite side.
Yeah, so I'll make mine real quick and I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Also, just something to be aware of. If you like, are you
See how my two are? Just like that?
So just like keep going to me. Okay.
Yeah. So that when we drive this into the ground and then we stomp on it, dirt will actually set in there and it'll be way harder to pull our tent stake out of the ground. So it's kind of like an upgraded tent stake. That's how you know. When you see someone carving a tent stake and you do that, you go, oh, you know some things. And the reason we do it on that side is because we're going to drive the stake into the ground this way, because the rope's going to come around and pull up like that. So when we pack in, when we step on it, the dirt's going to push right into that little notch. If you're running into spots like that where it's tough, just use the bottom of your blade all the way. Yeah, like the bottom of your edge right there.
Mhm.
It'll give you a little bit more leverage.
Can you talk about like if you're deciding what for any project, what like little trees to harvest?
Yeah.
If you're deciding-
So it depends on what's in your area too. Of course, you want to respect like what species are growing and maybe what you want more of. Yeah, hell yeah. But oak is really good. Maple is amazing. It's harder to carve, but your project will last longer. It's a hardwood. I like hemlock a lot because it's really a really pretty wood. And hemlock is actually kind of soft, relatively soft. But as hemlock as hemlock ages, it actually hardens more and more. That's why most cabins are actually built with hemlock, because it preserves itself very well. If you're just looking for a quick carving project to just like practice, white pine is amazing. It's very soft wood, easy to carve. Just let it dry out a little, and it's amazing to carve with. I just made spoons out of like fresh white cedar, which is a really nice carver when it's wet. Does that answer your question? Okay, cool. Cedar's really nice. Get your hands on some cedar. It's like very satisfying to carve because it's not stringy. You know, like some plants or some trees, when you carve them, you get like big long strands almost out of them when they're wet. Cedar's not really like that. It's almost like the fibers are made out of like ash or something, and it just carves very nicely. It's a little harder on your blades, but the end result is gorgeous. Or if you can get like, this is my favorite stuff to carve. This is maple, but see how the lines in it? It's spalted maple. So you can usually find it like near maple tree limbs that have fallen, and it's perfect hardwood, but it just comes out so beautifully when you carve it into stuff. It's like little worms that crawl through and leave like a debris field. Yeah, spalted maple. Super pretty stuff. I found that. It was, I'm gonna take some.